Scrutiny Committee on this wonderful Friday morning, the 14th of January 2022. Just to make you all aware, today's meeting will be recorded. Can I also welcome any members of the public and press to today's meeting? Can I kindly ask you to observe the meeting only and not speak or participate? Can I please remind you all to switch your phones to silent for the duration of this meeting? Can I refer you to the protocols for remote meetings which have been previously circulated? Namely, your microphone should be switched to mute unless you are speaking. Should you wish to ask a question or make a comment, can you please indicate via the chat function or by raising your electronic hand? I will assume that you have all read the paperwork before us today prior to the meeting. Please only use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak as an alternative to the electronic hand function or to raise any technical issues. When asking a question, can you please indicate what page number you are referring to? And the first item on the agenda today is to do a roll call. I am Councillor Steve Hunt. I am Chair and I am here this morning. I will now call on Chloe, the Democratic Service Officer, to take the roll call, please. Over to you, Chloe.
Thank you, Chair. I've marked you as present. Councillor Rachel Taylor.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Dean Causey.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Chris Jones. We've had apologies from Councillor Hugh James. Councillor Sheila Penry.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Sean Percy.
Present.
Councillor Cypher Harman.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Nigel Hunt.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Scott Bamsey.
Present, Chloe.
Councillor Jamie Evans.
Present, Chloe, diolch.
And Councillor Simon Noyle.
I'm here, thank you, Chloe.
Cabinet members, Councillor Annette Wingrave.
I'm here, Chloe. Thank you.
And Councillor Leanne Jones.
Present, Chloe.
Officers, Simon Brennan.
Present, Chloe.
Claire Jones.
Present, Chloe.
Carly Davis.
Present, Chloe.
And Tammy Davis.
Present, Chloe.
Thank you. Is there any officers that I've missed who are participating in today's meeting? Nope, I think that's everyone, Chair. That's the roll call complete.
Thank you, Chloe. Item 2 is Chair's announcements. We have chosen to scrutinise agenda items 7 and 8, which is the Tourism Update Report and the Western Bay Area Planning Board. And one of the biggest chairman's announcement is that in the early hours of this morning, I became a granddad again to a little baby boy, 9 pounds 4 ounces. So a bit of a whopper of a little baby. And so I just wanted to put that in there, being as I'm chair.
Congratulations, Chair.
No worries.
Congratulations, Steve.
Thanks,
And at that weight, you're going to take a pasting later on.
I think I bought the clothes too small already.
Back in the shop.
Does
Right.
he have surname?
Any other... Sorry?
Does he have our surname?
Sorry, Nigel, what did you say?
Does he have our surname?
Oh, most certainly, yes. Sorry, yeah. We haven't got a name yet, so I don't want to bog down the meeting with this discussion. Right. I will move on. In pre-briefing, I asked, was there any other items in the agenda the members wished to scrutinise? They didn't. So I would now like to also highlight that the report relating to agenda item 7, the Tourism Update Report 2022, was republished as a supplement to the agenda, as some paragraphs were missed off the original circulated report. So the report highlights the differences. Carly, is there anything further you want to add to this, or have I covered it about that particular paragraphs?
No, the newer paragraphs are in the amended report, yeah.
There we are. Thank you for that, Carly. Item 3 then is the declaration of interest. Can you raise your electronic hands if you have any declarations of interest, and Chloe will come to you. Councillor Rama, I can't see your name, Harman, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. The tourism report,
as some of you may know, I work at a restaurant right on the Aberavon seafront, and the report does mention a plan for the Aberavon seafront. So I don't quite know whether it's a prejudicial interest or a personal interest. So, but then again, the report is not there for any decisions. It's only for information. So do we have a legal officer that I could get an advice on? My apologies.
Chloe,
my apologies. I should have looked at that prior to the meeting, but I've been rushing today.
I don't think it is, but I'm not going to make that decision. Chloe, do you want to come in? Would you know?
I can check in the background quickly now if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, please do. Because that, unless I swap the items around, because I don't think it would matter to members if I went to the Western Bay and then back to the Torres, as there's only 2 items, just to give you time, Chloe? Or do you think you'd be quick enough for me to wait?
I think I can find it out in the next couple of minutes, Chair, if that's okay.
Okay, then if members aren't, everybody else bear with us before I move. Obviously, item 4 is the pre-decision scrutiny, which will move to the Cabinet Board agenda, which we decided to scrutinise the Tories update report, which is item 7, and it is on pages 13 to 24. So before we start this item, let's find out if Scythe has to leave the meeting.
Can I just check, Councillor Hunt? Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
I'm really sorry. Just to check the report in the pack that you've got is the amended report. Sorry, because I haven't got the pack. Is paragraph 30? Let me just get the right paragraph because I know which bit was missing. Is paragraph 35 entitled Knoll Country Park Master Plan?
Yes, it is, Charlie.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we are all on the same
same
page.
Anyway. Yeah, it is there, Carly. Yeah.
Chair, just to confirm, the legal officer is just replying now, so it should have an answer with you in the next couple of seconds.
No worries, that's great.
Chair, can I just apologize for the inconvenience? I should have checked this prior to the meeting. My apologies.
No, that's fine.
And sorry for the hold up.
Oh, Chair, I've got a response. So it says, if Councillor Harmon's business is specifically mentioned, then it would be beneficial if you step out. If any matters was to be raised around it, that would be the only concerns.
Well,
but if it's not specifically mentioned, then it would just probably be a personal.
Okay.
And I don't think it is mentioned, Councillor Harmon.
No, it's not mentioned. So I'll take the advice and I'll accept that it's a personal interest.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll keep that as a declaration of interest. I'll send you the form, Councillor Harmon. But for the purpose of the meeting, you can stay in when it comes to the tourism item.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Right. This report is for information. Reporting officers are Simon Brennan and Carly Davis. Again, I ask you if there's anything you want to add to the report, or do you want to go straight to questions? It's for information purposes, sorry. So we'll be noting the report, but Carly, do you or Simon want to add anything, please?
Happy to go straight to questions, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. There we are then. I'll take them in the order that were indicated at the pre-briefing. So I'll go to Councillor Sean Percy first then, please.
Thanks, Chair. No, thanks both for the report to committee today. I think there's some, in terms of the destination marketing campaign, some really positive looking numbers there. Quite pleased to see some of the progress. I suppose I've got a question in terms of some of the engagement and reach and likes and that in terms of the data. Have we got a breakdown perhaps geographically of some of that data? Because I'd be quite interested to see you know, how well we're reaching people outside of the county, outside the county borough in terms of the social media. I perhaps wouldn't expect that to come immediately today and during the meeting, but I'd certainly be interested in sort of seeing that, because I think it would be really key, I think, for the campaign to try and reach those people further afield and engage them. Obviously, there is a benefit to showing people in Neath Talbot what's on their doorstep, and there's plenty of people that don't realise some of the assets we do have. But I'd love to see if we are really reaching some of those key geographical areas, because I think when we discussed before, there was travel distance, wasn't there, and we were doing some targeting to particular population areas within the right sort of travelling distance. So maybe that's something you can come back to us with another time. But otherwise, the numbers look quite promising, and I think I'm quite pleased with the campaign itself. I think certainly locally there's been some good feedback, and I'm seeing lots of content and posts around as well. The other point I wanted to make is around the destination management plan. So I can see it's referenced in the report. Obviously, we know we've been sort of a little bit delayed putting together the new destination management plan for a whole host of reasons, isn't it? It says we're going to be invited to take part in some workshops, and the plan's hopefully going to be done by the summer, which seems quite, that's not far away now, is it? I'm just wondering when those workshops are going to happen, what they might look like. I'm really keen to pitch in and sort of get my ideas down onto paper. So it would be, I'm a little bit impatient and a bit keen. So thanks, Chair. Thanks both.
No worries, Sean. Simon, you're going to take this, or Carly first?
I'd take that.
Carly?
That's okay.
Yeah, go on.
Thank you. I'm really pleased that your the campaign is well received with yourself, and with that you can see that communities as well are engaging with it. To answer your second question first on the destination management plan, I haven't appointed the company yet. It is ambitious to say summer. It's probably the tail end of the summer if we're being realistic. Especially when we will start, we're a small team, and we will start to be, the summer pressures will start to take a bit of our time as well. But we haven't appointed the contractor yet, so I can't confirm what that, it will be workshop, whether that's online or, if it's possible to do face-to-face, we will, given the, the pandemic's twists and turns. Once we've appointed the contractor, we'll put a time scale in there, obviously, but I couldn't say when those will be. But obviously, we will avoid election period and things like that as well.
Yeah, no worries. Simon, do you want to add anything?
Nothing from me, Chair.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, engagement is a big part of it.
Yeah,
and I'm just conscious I haven't answered the first half of your question. I will certainly look at what data we can bring together on the audiences that are engaging with us on social media. What it's probably possible to get that data on who our followers are, but I would put the caveat on it. We're only 4 months into the campaign, and we are running a campaign in the middle of winter, when tourism campaigns aren't generally, I don't know what that data looks like yet, but I'm happy to try and get hold of some of that data for you, and happy to circulate. Would give me, a week or two maybe.
Oh yeah, Sean.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. In terms of the data, I think it might be something that's interesting for the team to track as well. Because I think that is going to be a key. Although it's not on the sort of things that's being tracked in that report, I think it would be interesting to sort of look at that sort of geographical spread. But yeah, in terms of the destination management plan, you mentioned the election. I was a little bit worried about that as well. That's going to take up a lot of time and cause a lot of disruption. And if it, depending on when the ball starts rolling, there may be some issues there. Some of us may not be here as well. So I guess it's the sooner the better. But we'll make the most of whatever comes of it. As long as members get a chance to really engage with the process, then I'll be happy. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sean. And I reiterate that I would hope that the excellent work that officers have been doing and are continuing to do, whatever the makeup of the next Regen committee is, I would like to think that they would take this work forward in the best possible way, as this committee has done very effectively during its time. So good point there, Sean. Now, Sean, is that a legacy hand, or do you want to come back? No, let's see. Nigel, did you have a question in the tourism? Sorry, I didn't write it down. I thought you did. So I come to you now if you have.
Not really, Steve, but I can ask one. That's no problem. In the Afon Argoedd, Valleys Regional Park Gateway, there are 3 electrical hookups, so I think that's a good move. Can we monitor that to see how well used they are? Because I'm sure the Margam Park, Knoll Park, Aberafon Seafront, and various other places where there's tourists in the county could benefit from electrical hookups, so I'd like that to be monitored. With regards to what Councillor Percy's just said about monitoring geographically, from my experience with a small business, that is going to be difficult, Sean, because the data is really unreliable. Just last week, this has been happening since the start with our website, but just last week we had a resident who lives in Sandfries West, know him well, his name came up, but he was registered as being in West Bromwich, right? So, and we've had this since the start, right? So that will be difficult for the tourism team to monitor that. But however, internationally, you'll get accuracy on that. So I'm sure there's people looking at it from US, Australia, Europe, Ireland, etc. And you'll get accuracy on that. And there was another question as well, but I was sprung by surprise by my...
well, if you ever think about it, I'll come back to you, because before I go to the other members, I see the cabinet member got a hand up. So, Annette, did you want to come in before I go to the questions?
No, bring Scott in first. So.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a couple more than Scott. So I'll go to Councillor Jamie Evans now then, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Yeah, thank you, Carly, for the report, and Simon. These are questions on behalf of myself and Councillor James, who can't be here, and has sent his apologies. First of all, it's regarding the public transport situation. You know, not everyone drives, not everyone that we're trying to entice to Neath Talbot drives. How are we working with public transport providers to ensure that they can get to these destinations? I know we've got the park and ride in place up in Neath to Pontydd Fechan, but it's not exactly the easiest journey from Neath to Neath on times. You know, the buses are unreliable. Half of them go all over the Neath Valley and take about an hour and a half to get up there. So, and then the trains, we know the problems with the trains in Wales. We don't receive our fair share of funding, and yet we're paying for England's high-speed rail network, but that's a different debate. We won't get into that. How are we encouraging people to get here via public transport, and how are we engaging with the operators, be that trains, buses, light rail? And then the second question is around the response we've had from the media. So I know Reach was the main company we were working with, and I believe it was Bristol and Birmingham. I can remember I asked back when we had the launch whether we were going to work with, you know, like North Wales Live or Nation.Cymru. You've got the National now. What's the response been like so far from journalists both within Wales and outside Wales? And is there any plans to extend the promotion to online services like Nation.Cymru?
Thank you, Jamie. Carly first or Simon?
If you like, Carly, I'll speak on the public transport bit of it first, because I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it is a key element, and I know I can see Councillor Percy nodding along there, because it's you know, it's something that he's long looked for as well. Obviously, from our point of view, that's a difficult area for us to really, certainly it's not something we're going to crack within this meeting, because it's a wider issue around public transport generally. And I think you know, there's obviously huge ambitions, but obviously they come at a cost, don't they? And that's the difficulty. I mean, Carly put a lot of effort into getting the the park and ride scheme up by Pont Neath Fechan last year, and we will, Carly can mention on the success of that. But it is, I mean, there's two different difficulties to it really, isn't it? One is persuading people to use the public transport network. And as you say, that's not always easy when either it's very difficult for them to get there or it takes a very long time for them to get there. So, you know, it is difficult when you've got areas which don't have that much use, if you like, and getting more and more frequent services to make it more useful to people. But as I say, it's a much more difficult probably nut than we can crack in this meeting. But it's certainly something that, you know, perhaps they have a lot of debates on it with David Griffiths in the highways and transport meetings. So maybe something to get involved with there.
Thank you, Simon. Carly, please.
Yeah, so just to continue on the public transport side, like Simon said, it is a hard sell for visitors to encourage them. It's one thing to get you by public transport, but it's another thing to have a good quality and convenient visit using public transport when you're here. So we don't discourage it, but we need, the question is on the provision and how that meets the needs of visitors on the ground. However, we do work with Regeneration, which has put together a series of ways to visit Neath, Talbot and Swansea by bus, and our Swansea Bay by bus is called as a website. But also we're working with Great Western Railway, and we'll be included in their campaigns, both with posters at train stations, on trains, and in their social media campaigns going forward. So it's one thing to get you by train. That's okay. And we have actually got a travel blogger driving, getting a train down from Scotland to come here. But they're going to hire a car when they get you to get around. And that's not just unique to Neath Talbot, that's unique to lots of areas in Wales, especially where there's a big mix of rural landscapes as well. On the point of coverage in the media, we haven't yet had that big chunky national press coverage, and we are working on it, believe me. But our objective never was to get big, high profile kind of media coverage. Our campaign is aimed at engaging with our audiences, and you can't necessarily track that very well by a big article in a paper, for example, but you can track that better and measure it better through social media. So yeah, our paid for advertising has gone through Bristol Live, Birmingham Live with Reach PLC. However, we have also engaged with publications through Active Traveller, so key target market, but also we had interest in from Golwg, and an article went out in Golwg on the campaign as well. It was a really lovely article. So we take every opportunity, and we are out there kind of talking to the various outlets and putting the press releases out. We can't control take up, obviously. I think our content's pretty good. So we are continuing. It's early days in the campaign as well. So we are continuing our marketing all the way up now till the end of 2022 within this campaign. It will be as you know, as it is. So I'm expecting to see a bit more take up in that, and we are working on national coverage as well.
Thank you, Carly, sorry. Jamie, you want to come back?
Yeah, just a quick one. Thank you. That's basically answered all my questions. But I want to know as well, are we marketing ourselves within Wales as well as outside of Wales? Because I used to work with a bloke from Carmarthenshire, Neath, which is literally just by cross hands. And he'd never been to the Knoll because he didn't know that it existed. I took... in the last 6 months, I've taken two of my mates from Neath Talbot to Neath Abbey for the first time. One of them was lived in Sandfields most of his life and now lives in the Melin. He didn't even know Neath Abbey existed. So, you know, we've got these great things on our doorstep, and people within the county don't know what we've got. People from just outside the county don't know what we've got. So if we could, you know, try and get a bit of coverage in even like the Carmarthen Journal or whatever they read in Ceredigion or Pembrokeshire or, you know, South Powys, is that something that could be looked at as well? Thank you.
We would, sorry.
Yeah, go on, Callie.
We wouldn't allocate budget to actively targeting in Wales visitors who would only come for the day. So the purpose of the campaign is to encourage short breaks and overnight stays. We're working on that now because we know that's a key objective of why the tourism team was re-established in the first place. We've got 91% of our visitors are already day visitors, and we know that from the research that came previously, they don't contribute the same amount of money to the local economy as overnight stays, and our job is to increase those overnight stays. That's not to say all our marketing, although we're not actively targeting the, you know, local press, they get the press releases, they get the news that goes out as well. So if something's released on Wales, on Birmingham Live or and it's of interest to those markets, then we would direct it towards Wales Online as well. But the purpose of the campaign, and we've got to be really careful that we don't dilute our efforts too much, is for the next, for this campaign, is to encourage overnight stays, so short stays, 2 or 3 days. Because we know that's what we want to do to encourage the growth of the visitor economy. So does that answer your question? We wouldn't miss out on any opportunity. If an opportunity came up and someone wanted to feature us, yes, but that wouldn't necessarily be paid for. You know what I mean?
All right, Jimmy. Yeah, lovely. Annette, I got a number of members wanted to ask questions. Did you want to come in now, or do you want me to do all the members first?
No, Steve, I can't see your list. I could only see the hands going up, in all fairness. So no, you carry on. I'll come in at the end. Thank you.
There we are. No worries then. Right, Councillor Sheila Penry indicated in pre-briefing. You're next, Sheila, unless your question's been answered. Sheila, are you still with us? Can you see her, Chloe?
Yeah, she's still in the meeting, Chair. I think Councillor Percy covered what Councillor Penry was going to ask. She said that she would come in if there was anything additional.
There we are then. Okay, I'll move on. Councillor Scott Barnsley then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to jump back in on a point I think Sheila made in pre-briefing and Nigel has brought up with regards to camping and electric hookups. I really do think we are missing a trick with it. You know, you look further west, down to Gower, further west out to Tenby, they have a lot of provision for this, for camping. And looking at point 17 of the report, they're saying that, we're trying to get people are going to use Port Talbot as a base. And I think, if you're planning a weekend away or a couple of nights away, like Cardi just said, we want people to have longer stays, then the first thing you normally do is go into Airbnb or something like that and type in, places to stay. And I go to Tenby quite a lot with the family, and it's flooded with, camping facilities there. And I think I really do think we are missing a trick in this county for that. So, as mentioned, we got the beach, we got Margaret Park, we got Knoll Park, and there isn't this type of provision. And I think camping and camper vans are a growing thing in the UK. So my question is it possible that as part of this committee we could do a study into the feasibility of that and seriously look into this as a council?
Carl, sorry, Scott, have you finished?
Yeah, that's it. I really do think it. For the county, that is the way to attract people to stay. We need places for them to go, and I think camping is, and people can use that as a base then. And we got the cycling, we got the beach. I really do think it'd be used, and it'd be extremely popular if we had the electric hookup facilities here.
Yeah, thank you for that. Before you come in, Carly, Simon, there was something proposed up the Knoll going back quite a number of years now. I'm sure, I can see Carly nodding, you could touch on that, because I know that it came through this committee with reference to caravans or cabins. We did a piece of work on that. So I can't remember the context of it. I'm sure you will know, Carly, but maybe you can sort of allude to that in your response to Councillor Bamsey. Over to you.
Obviously on the Knoll, there's quite sensitive planning situations there because it's a kind of listed landscape. So there's only certain things which would be permissible under planning or not. But the Knoll master plan looked at all the accommodation options that were available for the Knoll, and came up with a solution which in theory is acceptable from a planning perspective as well as meets visitor demand, and that was the provision of pod self-catering accommodation in the former service yard rather than out on the landscape. So that's all in the Knoll master plan, and it's noted in the report as something we're looking at funding options to take forward at the moment. On the provision of camping and caravanning in the county, I know from conversations I've had with planning that they've received, and I have over the last year, quite a lot of inquiries from people with land looking to set up caravan sites or camping sites, and we will always take those to the full potential that we can, and we can support those things through the financial support that we've got available in the council as well. But there's quite sensitive, quite not complicated or sensitive, but there are planning things that those caravan sites and campsites need to meet, which isn't always appealing to the landowner perhaps. But we are receiving more inquiries from those who would like to set up or expand camping and caravanning provision in the county. So we know there's demand there just from what's happening in the marketplace. I don't think we need a feasibility study, just the fact that I've noted in the report based on the bed stock that we've got compared to the amount of inquiries we're getting from businesses wanting to do it, and knowing what the market is looking for, the kind of inquiries we get from visitors. We know there's demand there. It just needs the private sector to come along and deliver it, and it's our job to help facilitate that, and we do. So I know that it's not a direct answer to your question, but it's as far as I can take it, really.
Just on that point, is this something we could do as a council? Could we, install these? I don't know the costs of it. I don't suppose it's a great cost. I suppose the yield you'd get back, in probably perhaps 1 or 2 summers. Is this something that we could put? We've got the land. Is this something we could look at rather than relying on the public sector?
I bring Simon in on that because it's all about budgets, isn't it? And I know the cabinet member could talk about it, but I'll bring her in at the end. But I come to you on that, Simon.
Yeah, it's a bit more tricky than it might sound, actually, generally speaking. I mean, it's the same for us with the electrical hookups we're doing for EV, for electric vehicles, as well as things like this. And you tend to need to put a bit of infrastructure in usually. It's about looking at it in the right place, I think. We've looked at it previously around Margam Park, and that might be something that could be looked at again in the future. That would look like a more reasonable alternative, really. But we've we've had to do some work in recent, what about the last 18 months, 2 years, around the power in Margam Park, because we needed to increase that because we were having slight problems there. So we had to get those things sorted first before you can even think about adding on to the power demands down in these places.
Yeah, so that was like my point, really. Like Simon said, he's looked in the past. My point is, can we set something up where we look at it seriously again? Like, perhaps Aberafon Beach would be there's a lot of wasteland down there, the old BP site. Rather than talk, could we put a study in place where we seriously looking at it, that we can install on our land, and I think the benefits would be great.
It probably wouldn't be a financial return for us, if I'm honest, Councillor Bamsey. They don't tend to, because of course you've got to manage them as well. And it's a lot easier to do that when you've got a campsite provision where you've got people who are around and about on a continual basis to answer queries and to deal with things that break down and whatnot, whereas we're not generally in that position. But I think Carly's right. It's about encouraging in the private sector to look at these opportunities. And they may sometimes be, more in the rural areas, really, as people are around diversification, etc. But we've had a growing number of campsites set up over the last few years. So I think it's about getting those to shift into that market as well, if possible.
Scott, I would suggest that we could do a piece of work on this, or whatever the committee is. I mean, of course, tourism is the biggest income generation. It's also job creation. So I think it falls under, well, it's not just within our gift, it's with education as well, within parts of tourism. But I'm sure we could look at doing a piece of work going forward, or whoever is here. So when it comes to the forward work program, maybe, with good suggestions, you want to put that on there, so that we can have more information, give officers the opportunity to get the answers that that you're passionate about, and that you've raised here in more detail, I would suggest, so that we can base it on facts and information that they can provide, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that sounds a good idea, Chair, if we could put it on the forward plan. And I think there's a consensus among all members, really. We'd like to see this really going forward. So
yeah, Carly back in now. Yeah.
I would say that it's definitely a scoping exercise to be done, but I would request that that's included as an action within the new destination management plan rather as a separate piece of work. Also, because we're a small team, and that could take up a significant amount of our time and resources when they're quite scarce. So it's definitely something that needs looking into further. And it was, because I've mentioned it in the report, it was always something which would be be looked into further as part of the new destination management plan. So that would just be my request, really.
No, and you're spot on. Totally agree with you, and I'm sure when we get into that conversation as members, we'll bear that in mind. But you are right. Yeah, definitely, Carly. I appreciate that. All right, Scott.
Yeah. Listen, we've heard a few times that obviously it's a small team. Probably a separate question. I should have waited my turn, but should we look to expand the team now? If we have got ambitions for tourism in this county, we cut back years ago on tourism. Is it time now we employ more people in the tourism department and look to expand this and do this type of work and have the available resources to do it?
Again, that's a question within the budgets of the authority, I would think. And I mean, it's about all members having their priorities,
I just interested how Simon and Carly would feel, I'm sure they'd like the provision.
They definitely would like more officers and help. I can assure you, you don't need to ask them that.
No. But it's a case of speculating to accumulate a bit with these sort of things, isn't it? With tourism,
All right. Yeah, no, good point, Scott. If right, Councillor Dean Causey, then, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not really going to say anything that we haven't discussed previously, but it would be remiss of me not to take the opportunity. And as Calvin Coolidge once said, nothing in this world takes the place of persistence. So I think it's worth me taking the opportunity to flag the potential opportunities that might arise from the Global Centre for Rail Excellence, if it does come off, in terms of tourism and heritage rail opportunities, at least in the first instance. I know we've talked about passenger transport, that might be a bit of a way off, but when Gareth Nutt was around, we were looking at borrowing a train, so I think we should keep that earmarked. And of course, my own organisation, Dancer, delivering community transport. There may be opportunities where we can deliver one-off shuttles and things like that. Transport is forever a perennial issue, isn't it? And I do understand that we're not going to solve it overnight, but I'm just flagging a few things. And of course, keeping 1 year on the horizon, if the laws change, for argument's sake, on the electric scooters, what we can do to make the most of them, or a fleet of bikes, the e-bikes. I think in the valley part of the world, e-bikes for active travel, commuting, but also for tourism would be absolutely marvelous. And I don't know if funding is available for that sort of thing, but I'm just flagging it, really. And just lastly, then on the camping side of things, I'm a big camper and camper vanner myself. And yes, okay, lots of the sites they privately owned, they privately managed, and it's a heck of a task. But there's lots of sites, a bit like I can't remember the name of them now, but a bit like the what you get in France, for argument's sake. Then it's basically just a car park, you know. And a lot of these caravans and camper vans, they're quite sort of self-contained. So yeah, you know, electricity is an electric hookup, but often people just need a place to dispose of the grey waste. You know, perhaps, you know, empty the chemical toilet, and maybe a tap, you know, so they can fill up some water. And I think we could be doing more of these things. They are in our gift, particularly, you know, in parts of the county borough where you've got community councils who perhaps own land. You know, we're looking at something like this up here in my part of the world. And what I find when I go camping in random parts of Wales, often a campsite, you know, where perhaps maybe just 20% of the campers will use, say, a local pub or something. It's a ready-made audience, you know. It's in terms of the local economy, a campsite will keep a local pub open, you know, or a local rugby club or a shop or whatever. So, you know, I know Rome isn't built in a day, and I know, you know, I completely take on board the points Carly was making about a small team and the resources, but just keep one eye on these things and just taking my chance to flag them. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Dean. And I'm sure all members will agree with a lot of the statements you made. It's about how to deliver is the answer, like you flagged up, funding, and we have got an excellent team, whereby it be tiny, and they do an excellent job, in fairness. But Scott mentioned it, you mentioned it. I'm sure there's opportunities to proceed and program in some of the things you mentioned too, because they're excellent plans and ideas, and it's just that prioritising sometimes. Carly, I don't know if you want to come back on Dean. I think he made a few statements, but I don't know if you want to make any comments on some of the points he raised. Carly?
Yeah, I think obviously as plans develop for Global Rail Centre of Excellence, we will of course take advantage of any opportunities to engage on that and any tourism potential. Yeah, I don't disagree with any of the comments. You don't necessarily need electric hookups to cater for the camping and caravanning market, but we have got a severe lack of electric hookup facilities in the county. Not quite so bad on the spaces which haven't got electric hookups. But like I say, it's an area of the market we are keeping an eye on. And, you know, when we designed the Avon Forest Park, Valleys Regional Park Gateway project, we knew that we were receiving lots of feedback from people who had purchased camper vans in particular. So that's what the hookups are designed for in the Avon Valley, in Avon Forest Park Visitor Centre anyway. So it is something we keep an eye on. Where the funding opportunities come up which allow us to do that kind of thing in our land, then we'll have a look at it. But yeah.
There we are. Thank you for that. Sean and Nigel, I haven't forgotten about you both. But I go to Councillor Sheila Penry now, then, please.
Thank you for that. Carrying on the caravan and camper vans, and, you know, with an all, I know what is cost affecting, but at the end, looking at this with the grounds we've got up there, surely in time that would pay for itself. Because we have, Simon, you know, when the fair is in Neath, we have put caravans there. And another thing I was going to ask you, Simon, have we got any land down the Midlands now that we could be using for this? Because that would be ideal through the corridor M4. You know, down by the metal box around there and the Midlands. Have we considered anything like that? Because I think if we could address this matter, that we know cost effective, but it would pay in the longer term by doing and putting provisions in there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sheila. Simon, I don't know if you want to come back, or Carly. You're all right. Go outside. Oh, you're on mute again now. You're still on mute. Right.
Is it come off? Is it? Can you hear me,
Right
Chair?
now. You're right.
Oh, my mic is still saying mute.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay, sorry about that. My mic was saying mute all the time. We obviously we're around metal box, etc. That's a commercial area, and we vehicle movements, etc. is a struggle over that bridge. So we wouldn't be looking to do anything on the metal box site. I think as Carly mentioned, we look at all sites that we've got around the county borough and see whether there's any potential for these sorts of sites going forward. But it's the servicing of them, which is perhaps one of the areas that we need to understand what sort of commitment would be needed and what sort of infrastructure needs to be put around having staff available to deal with problems, etc. Because that isn't something that we actually have in place at the moment.
Thank you, Simon. Sheila, all right?
Oh, and if I can come in on the Knoll.
Sorry, Carly, go on. Yeah, go on.
On the Knoll issue, I think Councillor Penry, you had popped out of the meeting when we discussed it earlier. On the Knoll, there's it's a listed landscape, so there is only certain things you can do within that landscape, and within that listing. But the Knoll Country Park Master Plan, which includes the assessment of accommodation potential for Knoll Country Park, looked at all of the options, and it came out with a recommendation for pods in the former service area of the park, which was in we believe would be more in favour with the planning regulation. So we are looking at funding opportunities to enable those proposals.
Thank you for that, Kylie. And I welcome that in the Knoll, because the Knoll is my jewel in the crown. Thank you for that, Chair.
Thank you, Sheila. I got two more speakers now then, and then I'll go to the cabinet member. So I'll go to Nigel first. Councillor Nigel Hunt, please.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I just want to just carry on with saying what Councillor J.B. Evans said earlier about transport investments and about getting connectivity within our county. I know that in the next meeting, we're going to be talking about the Levelling Up Fund. Well, the Levelling Up Fund did talk about transport investments, and we should really be looking to get having ready projects for that, but there was transport investments in there. So, I mean, if we were strategic about it, I'm looking at the Avon Valley, they got 800 rooms in the Avon Valley. I was astounded at that. I mean, that's the highest. They got more rooms in the Avon Valley than any other spatial area in the county, and yet we've only got I don't know, one bus every 2 hours going up that valley. So there's easy room for improvement. And also the Shared Prosperity Fund, we could look at feasibility studies within that group of funding. And so when we talk about tourism, I know that Pembrokeshire had quite a bit out of the Shared Prosperity Fund for feasibility studies for tourism. So when Councillor Bamsey and myself, we've been mentioning electrical hookups, surely there's a feasibility study there waiting to happen to apply for the next tranche of funding. So as I said, in the next meeting we'll be talking about that. So if some of the members could bear that in mind going forward. But the other point I want to make really is that since I've been on this committee really, whether it's active travel routes, whether it's economic development, or whether it's tourism, we're always having small teams. Now, to me, it's a false economy because we're missing out on too much. And as a county council, we need to be really thinking about boosting teams in regeneration, because we've got great ideas within this committee across the board. People are coming up with great ideas, potential, and we discussed the potential of this county. But for me, this council has to boost all of these teams going forward, because really what we've got is a false economy. We're saving money for one pot and losing a lot more from our economy in a different pot. So that's what we have to do for me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I don't think there's any responses to statements made there. Unless you've got something to come back with, Simon, did you want to?
No, Chair, other than obviously, from our point of view, the Levelling Up Fund is a capital fund. The shared prosperity, which will follow thereafter, is going to be revenue based. But we haven't even got the detail on the Levelling Up Fund round 2 yet, let alone full detail on shared prosperity. So we'll see what happens on those.
Thank you. Yeah, Sean Percy, Councillor Sean Percy, then please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Unfortunately, I suppose the discussion's moved on a little since I put my hand up, but that's how it goes in these meetings sometimes. No, I wanted to chip in and unfortunately elongate the discussion about sort of the camping caravan sort of side of things. Only to chip in a couple of things. I see Simon smiling there because we did have a discussion as local members in Sandfields. We've had a couple of brief chats about it, particularly around the seafront, and I think Simon has alluded to the fact that, you know, these things are not necessarily a caravan site. There are a whole range of ways of setting these things up, and Dean picked up a really good example of the sort of very low level basic facilities where you encourage a certain type of user there. It doesn't need a huge amount of investment and management, and I think that's the sort of thing as a council we need to be looking into. It's not, as you say, you know, I think Carly mentioned about the private sector perhaps dealing with the caravan sites, but actually there may be smaller things we could do as a council. And certainly I just wanted to put on record that, you know, local members in the Sandfields area have been discussing this and are quite keen to see if there's a way forward to you know, support you know, casual camper vanning and that sort of thing, you know, in the right spot that's, you know, to sort of enhance that visitor experience. So I needed to kind of to mention that because it is something we've had discussions about, but it needs more work, and I think Simon said, you know, we've got to understand how will that work in practice, what management resource will it need, and I think once we crack that, then, you know, Carly mentioned the destination management plan is key, and we all need to feed into that, because we need to agree a way forward for those destinations. We need to agree what is the ambition for Aberavon Beach, for the Knoll, for Avon Forest Park, etc. And if we collectively agree that the ambition is to provide X, Y, or Z, we feel the demand is there, then, you know, that's how we move forward with it. And I think that's why I'm quite keen to get, you know, into that destination management plan, because all these issues, transport, parking, access, facilities, you know, that's the document where it all gets fed into, discussed, and boiled down into a plan that we can then apply for tourism funding, Welsh Government funding, UK Government funding to deliver the objectives. And at the minute, the plan is perhaps so old now that it doesn't quite reflect all our ambitions as they stand. So I just kind of wanted to focus people's minds a little on that, because I know it's kind of been mentioned throughout the discussion. And the one last point I wanted to make, because you know, I think Nigel mentioned about sort of resourcing the teams and everything, and obviously that's kind of a frustration for all of us, isn't it? I'm sure Annette's going to come in now at the end. I know some extra staff resource has been put into active travel, so there's some movement in the right direction there. But I'm sure Annette will have more to say on that one. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Sean. I don't know if Simon or Carly wanted to come back on some of the points you raised there finally.
No, Chair. I mean, you know, as you said, they're all sort of valid points, aren't they? But I think Carly's point around including any proposals within the destination management plan give it a much more sort of coherent, strategic view of what we're trying to do within the county borough, rather than just specifically focusing on a site here or a site there. I think Carly's entirely right.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay then, thank you for your patience, Councillor Wingrave. Over to you, Cabinet Member. Thank you.
It's all right, thank you, Steve. Yeah, it's only fitting that members get their points and their questions across first anyway. I'll be as quick as I can. First of all, I'm going to go to a reference, a comment about continuation of this work in the next council term. None of us will know whether we'll be here, but you can be assured officers will still be here. Carly and the team have worked extremely hard on this, on a very, very tight budget. They're very passionate about it. They're a very small team, I think we should keep that in mind. But they have worked on it, and it is fluid. You know, as things move, they get one thing done and they move on to something else. So I'm sure they'll take all these concerns on board. Simon explained regarding the setup of campsites. It's not always as easy as we think it is. I often go to him with things I got in mind, especially for the seafront, and I'm told, yeah, that's fine, but, and then when I look at it again, I think, right, okay, that's a big hurdle to get across, but we are working on it. There are extra resources being put in, especially for staff, because that's the issue. It's not that we don't want to do this work, it's that there's no officers there to do it. So there is a little bit of money that hopefully will come forward again on top of what we have thought of putting in, but I can't go into that yet because it's not finalised. The other thing I'd like to say is that, you know, I write regular letters lobbying for more funding, and I'll write to everybody I can think of, but one or two voices are seldom heard. So you're all passionate about this. So can I suggest that you all put pen to paper and write to any relevant person you can think of, lobbying for more funding for us as a council, because we don't get our fair share as far as I'm concerned, and we should get more, whether that's from the Senate or central government. And one voice is rarely heard. You can all do this. It's fine to come on here and say we should be doing this and we should be allocating money for that, but we need the money to do that. So I would ask you all to do the same if possible. And last, I'm going to thank you, Carly, and the team, because I've been out on the ground with you and I've seen how passionate you are about this work, and I see how hard you work. And please convey my thanks to all the team. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Annette, and I'm sure all members will echo the points you raised there, certainly about the workforce. I don't think anybody doesn't recognise how much work they actually do. I don't know if they got time to sleep, actually, but they do an amazing job with the capacity and you know, what they have at their disposal. And I know you work very closely with them, so thank you for that as well. I think members have covered it pretty much all. So I would just like to add the last little bit, Carly and Simon, obviously, is that tourism is a massive opportunity. And I know you recognise that in your professional capacity. And I think many members have raised points, good points, but it's bigger than tourism as well, because infrastructure, I mean, they were mentioning transport. To get tourism, you've got to have the parking spaces, because I Simon will know this. I know the Pont Yvonne waterfall, the difficulties we had in that particular tourism attraction for walkers and so forth, for parking there, and so much came through planning and everything else. So infrastructure is key as well. And I would always urge and be parochial, and I agree with Councillor Causey's comments, but it's probably harder and more difficult to look at the valley and rural wards. I think, Simon, you touched on it earlier as well, but I think, as Annette has just said, our focus on Nigel, I think if there's a possibility with a new administration, and I take on board Annette's comments, let's try and get as much money into Neath Talbot from all avenues, where then decisions that are made can be made in the right way, because I personally think tourism is a massive opportunity, and I'm not saying we ain't doing as much as we can, but we definitely could do more, and we probably could do it better. But that's not a criticism, that's because you haven't got the resources at your disposal. So I see you grinning earlier. I think that's another thing that the new council may be looking at is prioritising where we can. And don't forget, it's a huge income generation opportunity through tourism, isn't it? So, but like I said, all members have covered it. So that's just a little bit of a summing up of my opinion, really. So, but thank you for this report. Thank members for all the... Sorry,
Steve, can I just come back in quickly there? There's something else I forgot to say. Do you know, we're all passionate about the borough and we want the best of everything we can provide for people. But our officers are also the same, and I quite often get to see things you don't, and I see the disappointment on some of their faces sometimes when they have to reject projects because they haven't got the resources, staff resources to do so. So it is important we try and get as much money in as we can, and we can all take a part in that. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I reiterated that in my sort of summing up. But anyway, getting back to the report, and this report is for information, as I said earlier. It's for information purposes, and we need to note the report. So, Chloe, that's all right, isn't it? Note this report, yes?
Yeah, that's fine, Chair.
Thank you. Right, if I move on to the item 8, which is the Western Bay Area Planning Board, the governance framework and financial governance and risk sharing agreement. It's item 8, and it's on pages 25 to 102. And Claire, I believe this is your report today, because Chris is missing. He's not here, is he?
He's on leave, Chair.
Right, okay. We in pre-briefing, it was more of an understanding. I don't know if Chloe spoke to you prior to the meeting, but I think if you can give us a bit of a brief update of this report, so members are more in sync with what the report is trying to say. There was a couple of questions, but maybe if you can give us an update, maybe those questions may not needed to be asked, but if you could do that, please.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing I'd like to highlight is that part of the standard formatting was left into the report from pages 32 onwards. I'm sorry, I must have missed that when I was drafting the report. You're so pleased to have written the report that you send it off and you don't scroll down and realise you've left half of the standard format in there. So my apologies for that. For that, and that'll remind me in future to scroll to the bottom of my reports and make sure that it's not there. Chair, this report is around governance and financial risk sharing. As you know, I've spoken in the past about the work of the Regional Area Planning Board. The Regional Area Planning Board isn't an entity or legal entity in its own right, and so therefore can't do things in the name of the Western Bay Area Planning Board, and as such somebody has to take the role as banker. Now Neath Talbot Council takes that role and has done, and so we receive the funding, we pay the funding out to providers, and would be responsible for any contracting or commissioning. We as a local authority have been paying out on legacy or historic contracts, because if we tried to go out to tender or anything like that, currently this authority would bear all of the risk of challenge for across the region. So say, for example, we had a little bit of extra funding from Welsh Government and we tried to go out to tender, or we tried to decommission something. Another provider from somewhere else could say, I wanted a chance to do that. I'm going to take Neath Talbot Council to court. We would bear all of the risk. So basically, for a long time, we have not done anything other than saying not done anything isn't strictly true. Sorry, my dog is going to bark. If she starts barking, I'll put my headset on. We have continued to monitor and evaluate services that we've done, but what we haven't been able to do is regularise or make formal existing contracts. And that really was an unacceptable situation for the local authority, and an unacceptable situation in terms of partnership working. So for a number of years, we have been trying to work on various agreements whereby either we agree to share our funding or we agree to risk sharing. And it's taken an awful long time to even get to this point. But basically, the Area Planning Board has adopted a governance framework which sets out how it will operate in the decision making. And that's really to make sure it behaves in a business-like manner and knows the remit in which it can operate and the powers that it has. And so I'm commending, obviously, that document. But in addition then, to make sure that when we going forward, we can either regularise existing contracts or go out to tender or recommission new services, or actually recommission the whole of the services, we need a financial risk sharing agreement, which I'm very grateful to my colleagues in legal services. They have drafted, not me, Chair. They have drafted that document. Now that document therefore will be signed by all of the responsible organisations to the area planning board, so it'll be signed, hopefully, if it's agreed, obviously, by ourselves, by City and County Swansea, by the Health Board, by South Wales Police and Crime Commissioner, Mid and West Wales Fire and Rescue Service. And basically what that will do is ensure that the risk of anything around contracting is shared across all of those partners and not held wholly by Neath Talbot Council. So it is a positive step forward. So I know our colleagues in Swansea are going through a similar approach. We'll be taking it through their governance frameworks, as will the other bodies. But for Neath Talbot, it is particularly important because we will ensure that there's good governance and that we will reduce the risk to the council itself. Sorry, does that help, Chair?
Very much so, Claire. Thank you for that information. That pre-briefing requested that sort of information, and as always, you're very verbal in response, and you covered everything there, in my opinion. But I will go to some of the points that were raised now, given that they've had a response in that way. I'm sure you've cleared it up for them. But Councillor Percy then first, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And no, thanks for that, Claire. That has definitely sort of cleared things up a little bit. You know, I read the report and I could see the background around sharing the risk, but I was a little bit sort of unsure about what was going on with the time scales between the governance agreement of 2018 and this sort of risk sharing agreement being a lot later. But I think you've said this has taken a long time to sort of pull together. So it sounds like the government's agreement was maybe step one, and let's formalise it all. And now this is sort of the next thing. So that you certainly cleared it up, and it sounds like, aside from reducing the risk to the council, this is going to make the area planning board more effective in actually actively engaging in new contracts. So it sounds like a win-win all round. We needed the clarity, but I'm fully understand where we are now. Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that, Claire.
Thank you for that, Sean. Nigel, at the pre-briefing, you also was concerned about various parts of the report. Has Claire put your mind at ease with this agenda item? Over to you.
Yeah, what is, Steve? I was just wondering why the board's been here since 2010, and now we're asking in 2022 for the risk, why it's taking so long. That was my only concern, really. But I'm glad it's happening. It's good, but just as to why it's taking 12 years.
Yeah.
To recognise it.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Claire, do you want to just come back on that point?
Because it's been a very long journey, that's why we have started discussions about this sort of agreement years before my involvement in the area planning board. Discussions were had about it being one sort of agreement, and then one partner said they wanted it to be a Section 33 agreement. We did a lot of time working on that agreement, and then they said, oh no, they didn't actually need a Section 33 agreement. So I agree, it's taken a very long time, and but it's not been for the want of trying by those in the support team, because we've got to bear in mind that we are just the support team. The area planning board has distinct representation. I don't want to imply that the APB hasn't been functioning. It has been functioning, but what it hasn't been able to do, or what Neath Talbot hasn't been able to do on behalf of the area planning board, is some work around commissioning or tendering and things like that. this will now enable us to do so. I couldn't agree more. Long time coming, and I just hope we'll get it through everybody, all partners, governance frameworks, and then it'll be in place.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Sean Percy, you want to come back?
Yeah, no, I suppose a point of clarity really, and kind of another question following what Nigel said. So if I'm right, it's perhaps not that we've been in a risky position since 2010. It's effectively we've been avoiding the risk since 2010, and this will now allow us to take decisions that we've been not taking because of the risks that were there in terms of entering into contracts. Is that broadly speaking?
So we haven't. So we've had on behalf of the Area Planning Board, we've held historic or legacy contracts, which we've been able to amend or carry forward or add to, but not change fundamentally. Obviously, we've been able to address any poor performance, any deficiencies or anything like that. So we have been able to do that. But for example, when we've had additional funding and we wanted to secure additional service, we haven't been able to go out to tender, and I've brought reports to this committee where I've talked about entering into a grant agreement because that was an alternative approach to tendering, which mitigated some of the risk for the local authority. So we have monitored and have ensured the quality of the services that have been delivered, but and have worked with it, obviously completely within the legislative provisions to do things to create new services, but to mitigate the risk to Neath Talbot Council. But what we haven't been able to do is go forward with things like tendering and stuff like that, because that would present all of the risk to Neath Talbot. We want to move forward now with some commissioning and some tendering, and this will give us the shared confidence to do that.
Thank you, Claire. All right, Sean. Any other member got any questions? I don't see no hands. This item is for it's a recommendation that is on page 30. Sorry, there are two recommendations. I will ask for a proposal second for them in their entirety. So can I have somebody to propose this goes to Cabinet as written?
I'll move, Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Seconder, please.
I'll second,
Chair.
So we are. You get whichever one, Chloe, you take that. Can I have any member who feels that they don't want it go into Cabinet to raise their electronic hand? So then that's carried to go to Cabinet as written in the two recommendations. I'll move on. Item 5 is the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme. I'll go back to the Scrutiny agenda now to look at the Forward Work Programme. It is attached for information for members to note. But Chloe, can I bring you in as normal? You take the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme item. Over to you, Chloe.
Thanks, Chair. As you said, it's just for noting. As you can see, the next meeting's got quite a few items on there. So if members have got any queries, just let me know.
No worries. Councillor Sean Percy, please.
Yeah, no, just another quick note and shout out for the destination management plan here, I suppose. I guess that needs to move into the to be tabled section in terms of how the committee will be involved in that once that becomes clear. Obviously, I know it's not clear yet how the workshops and things are going to come about and when that might happen, but I think that just needs to be something that's written down on the radar for the future of the committee meetings. Thanks, Chair.
Chloe, please.
Yeah, just to come back on that point, Chair, obviously I'll make a note of that in the minutes anyway, and I'm sure that officers will, sorry, I muted myself then. I'm sure officers will update members on the position of the workshop and what's going to happen in terms of that. So then it'll be for the new administration then to take any further work forward in terms of what they add to the Forward Work Programme.
Yeah, thank you, Chloe. Councillor Nigel, please.
Thank you, Steve. Just to follow up, I said in briefing, really, I expected the air quality management area to be discussed in regeneration. I can see that the next meeting is full. I'm not suggesting I want to put that on, but could I provisionally put it on, even though if I'm not here in next year, in the next term, can I just put it on the forward-looking programme that it is at least discussed?
Well, of course, you're part of the committee now. Chloe probably could take advice, but of course, in your role here now, that can be put on, and members of the committee, whatever it may be, will deal with it as and when. But Chloe, I don't know if you want to come in on that as well.
Yeah, because I'm sure officers will take on board the comment that of that and have that as a future report, because obviously sometimes officers do bring reports themselves to say, oh, can this be put on the scrutiny agenda or the cabinet board agenda, whichever suits. So if they take that on board, I won't be able to add it to this forward work programme because obviously it's ended now and we don't have a forward work programme for the new administration yet. But I'm sure because you've raised it, it could be on officers' agenda to bring forward in the future, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Chloe.
All right with that, Nigel?
Yes.
Because air quality is massive. You're quite right. I mean, it covers everything, doesn't it? So if it falls under our committee or whoever's committee it is, I think it's a good point, and I think it should be there personally. But again, it'll be for the new administration. But as Chloe mentioned, I think officers, this is recorded and they know what has been said here, and it'll be minuted. So hopefully it will be part of the forward work programme for this particular committee. Sean, is that a legacy, and does you want to come back?
No, I was just going to come in on this one briefly, Chair, because I think Nigel's referring to it. I think you made a comment in the previous meeting that perhaps was a bit wider in scope than the report we were looking at around air quality. There is an air quality report that comes to the committee on an annual basis, which I think is what Nigel's referring to.
Yeah.
But I think it comes, if I recall, it comes maybe September time, I off the top of my head. So I think there is one in the regular cycle that we've had every year since I've been a member of the committee. So I expect if we're all back after the election and on the same committees, that we'll be looking at it again, all being well.
Yeah, thank you for that. Before Nigel comes back, Nigel, I thought you was looking at it in more of a broader sense for various different types of air quality from, different sources, because with Tata Steel and that we've had discussions. So I didn't know if it was the one Sean was referring to, or was you looking at a more broader air quality survey or study? I wasn't sure. Maybe you could say what you actually was looking for.
I would like a broader survey, Steve. I brought something up with the health board yesterday in the seminar, and the answers I received really give me a bit more urgency about it. I think that we're not really looking at, we haven't had an impact assessment of it all, and of course the polyaromatic hydrocarbons, that we haven't answered that. There's still a big question mark around where the measuring station and where the source is. It's way too, there's just I want clarity on that, particularly. But
okay, well, officers are taking that on board. I don't know if they want to make any comments in reference to that, whether it's under this committee completely or it's a broader issue. So I don't know if any officers want to comment on that. Same, no, Sean got your hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering, because the air quality update report, the annual one, is quite comprehensive. It's 100 pages, etc. It mentions the polyaromatic hydrocarbons, and there's a page or so on that usually. I'm just wondering if there was like extra specific information. It might be worth, if you pass it on to Democratic Services, perhaps they could let the officers who prepare that report know maybe if there's a few extra things that could be added in, because I think it would be I'm not sure it would be worthwhile to have two reports and two separate discussions if we've already got a really comprehensive report on air quality. If we just need a few extra bits of information to have that full discussion, that might be a neater way of doing it.
Yes.
That is just a suggestion. I
think that's a good suggestion. I think, Nigel, if you specifically put forward what your really trying to clarify or find out.
Yeah.
That could be put into the relevant officers, and then that could form part of the comprehensive air quality report, which would answer a lot of what your concerns are, if that's all right. I think that's something that we can do, Chloe, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep, you can certainly pass on any queries to myself or copy Simon in as well, maybe, and can look to add that into future reports.
There we are. All right.
The air quality would be Kerry Morris.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, copy Kerry in.
Yeah.
Kerry has sent me a report, and there are some things on there I really want to query. So
there you go.
I'll feed back into Kerry.
Excellent. Thank you, Nigel. Anybody else on anything on that forward program? No. Okay, then that'll take me to item 6, which is urgent items. I have no urgent items today, and I would just finally, before I close the meeting, to wish you all a lovely weekend, whatever you may be doing. The sun seems to be shining, and